I lied to my husband and went over to his friend's place every weekend, but he found out and now.
I really need advice from everyone. Hi, Redditors. My name is Irene, and I really messed up. I don't think I can escape from this. This would be a bit of a long story, so please read it through. It's a bit complicated, and I'm in big soup. I am 25 years old. My husband's name is Fred, or should I say ex-husband, because he might soon divorce me. He is 27 years old. There's a reason I'm so worried and asking for advice, so I'll just start from the beginning. My life has not been the usual smooth life ever since I was little. My parents fought all the time, and I have two siblings, Jeremiah and Martins. They are twins, and they are both 19 years old right now. I am 6 years older than them. I was the one that usually stayed with the boys in their room anytime my parents fought because the twins always cried, so I had to keep them busy. My parents always ended up apologizing to me after, saying it was just little arguments and that it wasn't going to happen again, but that was a lie, and I should have known. It continued for some years, that is, throughout my middle school. I overheard a friend of theirs talking to my mom and telling her that her and dad should get therapy and that they needed it. They followed their advice, and I wished they never did because it led to their breakup. My mom and dad divorced when I was in my last year of high school. I just turned 18 then, and the boys had turned 12. Since they were still underage, my mom got custody of them because she argued that she could take better care of them since they were still little. That wasn't the only reason. The boys were calling her name in the courtroom throughout the case, so the judge saw the evidence that the boys wanted to be with her, so she agreed. Meanwhile, I, on the other hand, was going to stay with my dad. The custody thing didn't matter since I was already of age, but I didn't want my dad to be alone. I knew I was going to miss the twins' presence, and it wasn't going to be the same going to see them in Mum's place. Yet I had to stay with Dad. Dad took care of me very well and paid for my college fees by the time I was 19. I had already taken a job then because I didn't want to put a lot on Dad since he was going to be paying child custody for Mum too. I was working at a fast food restaurant, and I was just on the evening shift since I had classes in the morning. It was stressful, but I had no choice because everything on my mind was that it was going to help Dad. I got fired from my job due to them being overstaffed, and they had to let some people go. Unluckily, I was one of them. I didn't give up there because in my second year, I found another job at a fast food restaurant, and the pay was going great. I didn't know everything was going to change when I met Fred. I was in my third year and still trying to cope with mixing classes and working together, so it was very tiring. A guy walked in that day and made an order. I didn't pay him much attention at first, but he came the next to order food, and he came the next day again. I didn't complain about anything because there was nothing to complain about. He started making small talk one day, asking me how my day had been, and before I knew it, I was expecting his visits. The acquaintances I made at the shop teased me anytime he had left the shop, saying something similar to, "He was my secret admirer." I just laughed it off most times, but I won't lie that it made me feel some kind of way. I didn't know his name, but he knew mine due to my name tag on my clothes, so I got the courage to ask him, and he said his name was Fred. I liked his name, and that wasn't the only thing I liked about him. I also loved his smile and the way he talked. I was looking forward to my breaks because he started coming during my breaks to spend time with me. We talked a lot on our breaks, like our age and family. I was 20 at that time, and he was 22. We ended up exchanging contacts, and he told me he wasn't going to come much due to some personal issues, but he would be calling me. I didn't ask him anything about it because it wasn't my business per se. So I kept to my usual routine of going to classes in the morning, work in the evening, but this time he called at night. We talked about this particular night, and he said he liked me. He asked me out, but I turned him down because I knew the relationship was stressful. I had never dated anyone, but I knew how it looked because I'd seen it with my friends, and it was also a lot of responsibility. I didn't think I could cope with it with all my academic and financial issues. On the holiday, I went to my dad's place, and Fred said he wanted to come with me. I was wondering why, but I said, sure, why not? He greeted my dad and said something so absurd like he liked me and wanted to date, so he was going to wait till we were done with college. He asked my dad for approval if he could go on with his plans of courting me, and my dad smiled and said he liked him so he could. Fred was not kidding about that. He followed through with his words and courted me till we graduated from college. People think we were dating, but I said we weren't, and it was not a relationship. It didn't become easier for me after college because I started thinking about how to get another job. And I couldn't work in a fast food restaurant throughout because I would need to pay for a lot of things. I had quit from the fast food job some days before I graduated from college. I was 22 at that time, and I felt like I had not done anything with my life. The biggest surprise came to me one day. I told Fred I needed a job and if he knew anyone that was hiring. I studied computer science in college, so I was pretty good in problem solving, coding, and typical skills like that. He told me that day that he was looking for a personal assistant to manage his tasks, and also he could hire me if I was interested. I thought he was joking, so I tapped his hands and laughed, but he just smiled and gave me a card with his name on it. He was a financial tech, something I don't want to go into details about, but it's related to software engineering and the likes. Long story short, it meant he was a very rich person and he needed a personal assistant. It was nothing to think long on, so I kissed him and accepted the job. That was one of my biggest mistakes. He wanted to hire me just directly, but I didn't want that, so I did the whole contract thing with him. I was shocked when I saw the pay because I had never seen those figures before. I thought he increased the pay for me, but he told me this was how he paid regular employees, but because I was a personal assistant, of course the pay was going to be higher. No, we did the whole contract thing the next day, and I started immediately. I worked there for about 2 months, and Fred asked me out on a date. He said he hadn't stopped courting me. I accepted since I was already in a good spot and I was okay financially. The pay was monthly, and it was a lot, so I was able to give some to my dad and also to my mom. I still keep in touch with my mom and the twins because I loved them too. I went out with Fred, and it was one of the best days I had ever had. He made me feel special and gave me everything I ever wanted. He was the best guy ever, but I didn't know my thoughts were going to change on that. Fred and I dated for a year, but since we knew ourselves throughout college, we basically knew everything about each other. Fred asked me out one day, and I thought it was going to be like every other day, but I was wrong. I was shocked when he went down on one knee and proposed to me. I didn't doubt him for a second, so I said yes immediately. I met with Fred's parents, and they were very lovely to me, but he had told me before that he didn't really like his parents much because they had pushed him to do things that they wanted, not things he wanted. I told him to forgive them, and he did by making up and calling them anytime he was free. We got married when I was 24 years old. The marriage was a huge one, and I saw many people I hadn't seen before. Dad came, and Mom also came with the twins. I hadn't seen the twins for a while, so they hugged me tight when they saw me. They were 18 years old, and they told me they just entered college. I promised them I would be helping them with anything, so they should feel free to ask. The marriage ended, and I was already tired. Fred and I went on a honeymoon, and it was fun being with him. We didn't forget about work, and we continued after the whole marriage and honeymoon thing. Fred had a partner at work, and it was a guy who was in his 30s. He still looked young, but I never really talked to him, so I just observed him. His name is Jim, and he traveled a lot for the business deals abroad while Fred handled the business deals within the country. It was a great compromise for both of them to make everything easier. Fred had bought an apartment, so I moved in and we started living together. We wanted kids, but we planned that it was so soon and we could get kids anytime, so it wasn't a big deal. Saturdays and Sundays were my day off, but Fred usually had to go to work on some weekends to deal with things. This particular day on a Saturday, I was at home just finishing up cleaning chores when I heard the doorbell ring. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I thought maybe Fred had ordered something and it was the delivery guy. I didn't have my bath yet since I was doing chores, but I was wearing shorts and a top. I didn't pay it no mind since it was just to collect the package and sign it so he leaves. I opened the door, and alas, it was Jim. I felt embarrassed, but I don't know why. Maybe it was because I felt so weird with my husband's friend partner seeing me in shorts and top with my scattered bun, but I still tried to remain calm. I think I spotted him eyeing me because his eyes moved up and down on me. I cleared my throat and greeted him. He told me he just got back and he came to see Fred, but he tried his number and he wasn't picking. I told him to come inside because it was not okay for him to keep standing outside. When he came in and passed beside me, I don't know if it was the perfume or body spray he used, but he smelled great. Jim sat down and I couldn't help but admire him. This was the first time I was alone with him, and I don't know what it was, but he looked different. I don't know what it was, but there was this feeling in the air, and it was awkward. I thought about going to change my clothes, but it was going to be weird if I suddenly changed them, so I just sat there on the couch that was opposite him and began pressing my phone. I was going to try and bring up a conversation with him, but he spoke first. He asked me how my marriage was randomly, and he laughed because he knew it sounded weird. I told him it was going great. That was how we began talking, and I didn't know it would lead to different things. He was telling me different stories related to his work and things with clients. I also told him how things were at work. It was fun with him, and we were laughing so hard. Jim's phone rang, and it was Fred on the line. I didn't hear what Fred said because it wasn't on speaker, but I was sure he couldn't come back that day with the way Jim was talking. I was right because Fred called me immediately and told me he couldn't come back because of some business till the next day. I understood because it was like this sometimes, and I had no complaints. He also asked if it was all right if Jim could stay for the night because he couldn't go home since he just came back from overseas and his house was still far away. I hesitated, and I didn't know what I was thinking. My mind thought of dirty things, and I was disgusted with myself. I told Fred that there was no problem with that, and it was okay with me if he stayed. I got off the call, and Jim apologized, saying he wanted to say it, but Fred said it first about the whole him staying over thingy. I just laughed it off, and I said it was okay. I showed him to the guest room we had, and he thanked me. I used that chance to shower, but during my shower time, I had this thought of going over to Jim's side naked. I know that's a crazy thought, but I'm not the only one that has had random thoughts like that, right? Anyways, I was able to clean up and change my clothes into comfortable clothes. Time had passed, and it was already getting late, so I made dinner for both of us. He thanked me and said he enjoyed the food, and I smiled at what he said. The next thing he told me was that he loved my smile. I don't know what happened, but there was this silence of us looking at each other, and I broke contact. I didn't want to stay around him any longer because my mind was already going crazy. I told him goodnight and slept off alone that night, wishing someone was with me in bed, mostly thinking about Jim. I don't know what was coming over me, and it was just weird. The next morning came, and by the time I woke up, he was already dressed. He thanked me for letting him stay the night and said he already talked to Fred on the phone, so he had to leave early. I wanted him to ask for my numbers, but he didn't, so I didn't say anything. My husband came back that day some hours later, and he didn't smell the same as Jim. I didn't like that, and something in me wanted to see Jim again. That night, I did something very strange. I waited for my husband to go to sleep, and I took his phone, searching for Jim's number. It was the first number in his contacts list, so it was easy. I copied his number into his phone, and I planned to text him anytime I was alone, and Fred wasn't around, so he wouldn't suspect. Fred told me he was going to be more busy because he got a business deal to work up in the city, and I understood. I still worked from Monday, Friday, so the Saturday I was looking forward to had come. I texted Jim saying it was me, and I was surprised when he said he was glad I texted him. We kept texting and talking about random things, and it was strange how both of us were giving off the same energy. He told me that he wouldn't be traveling for some time because he had finished up what he wanted to do overseas. I told him I was bored staying home with Fred not being around, and he asked me if I wanted to come over to his side. It was so sudden, and I was shocked at that. I didn't think that was something he could say, and my mind never went there, but I wanted to go to his house to meet him. He sent me his location, so I got into my car and went to his house. His house was way different than ours. It was small just for one person, so I knew he didn't have a wife, but there was no way he couldn't have a girlfriend. He welcomed me and told me to feel at home. I still couldn't believe I was at my husband's friend's house, but here I was, already taking wine with him. The wine was non-alcoholic, so I couldn't blame the wine for what happened. I don't know what led to it, but I slept with Jim. One moment, we were talking and laughing about funny things. The other moment, we were kissing and I was on top of him. It was so crazy, and I told him we shouldn't be doing this because I was married and my husband was his friend. He asked me if I wanted to really stop, and I said no. So yes, that was how I slept with Jim, and something I know I should have stopped. It was getting late, so I cleaned up and got dressed. He told me he wanted to see me again, but I said I could not. By the time I got home, it was already dark, and Fred was waiting for me. He asked me where I went, so I lied to him and told him that I went shopping, but the car broke down on the road. He believed me, and that night ended, but I couldn't stop thinking about Jim. I kept texting with him, and it was always fun. I kept looking forward to the weekend to see him. When I was free on Sundays, I used the chance to meet up with him in his house. This was going on for a month, and I knew I should have stopped, but I didn't. My husband kept asking me every weekend where I was going. That made me come back late, but I always found a way to escape from his questions and bring up lies. Everything came crashing one day when I went to Jim's house on the weekend. I was in the living room with Jim drinking wine and laughing when I heard a knock on the door. Jim went to open it and he froze, but I understood why when I saw Fred walk into the house. I was shocked, and I started stuttering and asking him what he was doing in Jim's house. He told me he knew something was up since I came home late and I didn't know it, but I was smelling like Jim. He said he had been suspecting something since I came home, always smelling like Jim. I didn't think that was a thing, but he was probably right, since Jim had a strong perfume scent around him. That still didn't explain what he was doing there, so I asked him how he knew I was here. He told me he put a tracker under my car so he would be able to track me. Can you believe it? Anyways, he kept saying things and he asked me if I had slept with him. I was about to deny it, but Jim said yes. We had slept together. I didn't know what was going through Jim's head, but he said something like he had finally gotten him back after all these years. Jim said it was easy to get me and he was glad. He just laughed and said so many words that hurt me while also telling my husband he had done his revenge. Fred left the house and I was asking Jim what he meant by revenge, but he didn't say anything. He told me to ask Fred, so I went home to meet him. When I got home, he wasn't around, so please, I'm worried. What do I do because I'm so confused? Should I keep asking Jim because I don't know how to talk to Fred? I need help. Asterisk, asterisk, comments, asterisk. 1. Asterisk, asterisk, you/Reddit user. 1. Asterisk, asterisk. I have so many questions and I don't even know where to start. Why would you suddenly start having feelings for another man because he was making you laugh more than your husband? Why would you even agree to go to his friend's house? I didn't know ladies were like this. 2. Asterisk, asterisk, you/Reddit user 2. Asterisk, asterisk. Whoa, this is a crazy story. I honestly think you should talk to Fred and hear it all from the horse's mouth. But you really messed up, Irene. You can't just start having feelings for another man just because he smells nicer than your husband. If that was how women were thinking, everyone would have gotten divorced by now. 3. Asterisk, asterisk, you/Reddit user. 3. Asterisk, asterisk. Obviously, there's something that's between Fred and Jim since Jim said something about revenge. Did Fred sleep with Jim's wife or something in that way? You should hear it all from Fred and make sure you talk to him. He's your husband, so you can't just let this marriage fail because you guys have been together since. 4. Asterisk, asterisk, you/Reddit user 4, asterisk, asterisk. So you're telling me you cheated on your husband, a man who you built up a strong relationship with over the years, with his friend, someone who you talked to in a day? Jim ended up using you for a certain revenge. He sounds very petty. I doubt Fred will still want to be with you, but at least he would forgive you, so talk to him. Update. My marriage is officially ruined and I know it was all my fault. Fred came home and I talked to him. I asked him what Jim meant and he told me he had a little issue in college when he was courting me. He had known Jim since then and Jim had a girlfriend. His girlfriend made a move on Fred and Jim keeps blaming him. It was a very petty thing and I dragged myself into it. I regret what I did and I shouldn't have been fooled by Jim. Fred apologized for the tracker thing and said he shouldn't have done it, but I said it was okay because I would accept anything after what I did. He said he couldn't be with me after what had happened. I begged him at first, but there was no use in begging anymore because he wasn't listening. Just like that, our marriage had come to an end. He divorced me and left me with the house. It felt so empty there, so I went back to my dad. I told him what happened and he said I learnt my lesson, which was true. Don't get fooled like I did and stay true to your marriage. I wish I could redo things, but sadly there's no way. Fred, I hope you find someone better. I messed up big time, but I guess regret is always too late. I did something so despicable. I'm ashamed of myself right now. I don't know how I got here. I have ruined my life with my own hands. I never knew my life would ever turn out this way. I slept with a debt collector to clear our debts. Don't judge me, guys. I didn't know what I was doing. I was desperate and naive. Hi, guys. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a 26-year-old sales rep and I live in Florida. The name of my husband is Alex. He is 30 years old. Alex is a high school teacher. Alex and I have been married for 2 years now. Alex and I met 5 years ago, and ever since then, we have been inseparable. It was love at first sight. Alex is a perfect gentleman. He is every woman's dream man. Alex has been my best friend for the past 5 years now. He told me the first day he saw me that he was going to marry, and fast forward to 5 years later. We are married, but I ruined everything by sleeping with a debt collector to clear our debt. It all started 2 years ago, immediately after our wedding. Alex took a loan from a debt collector for our wedding, and immediately after the wedding, 3 months after our wedding, our lives became a total nightmare. I would like to refer to the debt collector as Mr. Robert. I wanted a big wedding, don't get me wrong. I have always fantasized about my wedding ever since I was a little girl. I wanted everything to be perfect, but unfortunately, Alex couldn't afford that because he was just an ordinary high school teacher. He told me he wanted a small and intimate wedding and that there was life after the wedding. I wished I listened to him, but I didn't. I was adamant about having a big wedding that Alex finally gave in to my demands. He went and took a loan with a huge interest rate from Mr. Robert, a loan shark. I encouraged him to take the loan and that we would pay back immediately after the wedding. I thought we could get all the money we spent on the wedding from the gifts people were going to give us. But I was wrong. We didn't even realize half of the money we spent on the wedding. It was after the wedding that I understood why Alex wanted a small wedding. Life became hard because we were in debt. We could barely eat a decent meal. All of Alex's salary went into paying debts. Alex and I started having issues immediately after our marriage. It was as if the Alex I dated for 5 years was different from the one I married. Frustration can change a man's true colors. Every day, the debt collector Robert would come and disgrace us, asking for his money. I got tired of the daily embarrassment that I wanted to run away at some point. Don't judge me, guys. I love Alex so much. That was why I married him, even though he wasn't financially buoyant. But after the wedding, everything changed instantly. I don't know if it was because we were in debt or something else. Alex became distant from me. We were no longer gisting like we used to. No more date nights. We were just like roommates living together. He barely talked to me. He is always moody and lost in thought. He became a shadow of himself. I felt bad for him. I blamed myself for everything. I wanted to fix everything so bad. One day I decided to go see Robert the debt collector so I could fix everything. I wanted to know if there was a way out. Mr. Robert is a very wealthy man. He has all the money you could think of. He got his wealth from ripping people off. His loan interest rates were outrageous. So I went to meet to see if I could beg him to have pity on Alex and I. I regret going to Mr. Robert's office on that fateful day. That was one stupid decision I would forever regret. I begged Mr. Robert to please assist us and cut his interest rate as we recently just got married, and Alex is just a high school teacher. After listening to my pleading, Mr. Robert told me he would not only reduce the interest rate, he would clear the debts, but on one condition. Guys, nothing prepared me for what came out of his mouth. Mr. Robert asked me to sleep with him so he would clear out our debt. I was shocked and too stunned to speak. I stormed out of his office furious. Why would he even think of such a thing in the first place? Didn't he know I was a married woman? I was so disappointed in him that I lost the little respect I had left for him. After my visit to Mr. Robert, things became even harder. Mr. Robert would go to Alex's place of work to embarrass him every day. It got so bad that the school authority threatened to sack him if he didn't sort out his mess. Alex became a frustrated man. I couldn't just stand and watch Alex suffer any longer. I called Mr. Robert and told him I had accepted his offer. That was it, guys. I slept with Mr. Robert to clear our debt. I didn't do it out of pleasure. I was desperate. I wanted to save my marriage. I wanted to save Alex from the daily embarrassment. I wanted my Alex back, the Alex I fell in love with 5 years ago. I thought clearing our debt would bring back peace and love to my home. But I was wrong. My whole life crumbled after my affair with Mr. Robert. I regretted my actions immediately. I couldn't believe I broke my marriage vows by sleeping with another man. I couldn't believe I betrayed Alex's trust by sleeping with a man he despised most in his life, the very man that has embarrassed him on so many occasions. I was filled with guilt. I couldn't even look Alex in the face anymore. I wanted to confess everything to Alex, but I was scared of what his reaction would be. I knew he might not forgive me for sleeping with Mr. Robert, our debt collector. Alex is a good man. He doesn't deserve everything that I have done to him so far. It was my greedy desire for a big wedding that caused this mess in the first place. We wouldn't be here if I had listened to Alex and had a small and intimate wedding. I blamed myself for everything. I couldn't even forgive myself. I wanted to confess to Alex, but I decided to forget everything after seeing how happy he was when I told him my parents had cleared our debt. He was so happy that he knelt down and apologized for how he has treated me ever since we got married. He told me he was under a lot of pressure and promised to change. He also promised he would pay my parents back, but I told he shouldn't bother about that, but he insisted. Alex became a changed person. Slowly, I started seeing his smile again. My Alex was coming back gradually, but I was losing myself every day. I couldn't bring myself to forget about everything that happened on that fateful day. I was full of regret. I started withdrawing myself from Alex because I didn't want to notice I was hiding anything. Alex knows me too well, and it's very easy for him to notice when something is bothering me. In fact, I can't even hide anything from Alex. Alex noticed my sudden change of attitude and asked me what was wrong. He told me he noticed I haven't been myself ever since our debt was cleared by my parents. I knew there was no way I could fool Alex. He was too smart for that. So I had to come up with something as quickly as possible. I told him nothing was wrong with me and that I was just sad about everything, that I regret not listening to him about having a small wedding. He told me all that is the past now and that we should forget everything and forge ahead. I decided to move on and just forget about everything. It was hard, but I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to lose Alex. He was my soulmate. Telling him the truth would mean losing him forever, and I wasn't ready for that. I started pretending to be happy. Things were beginning to go back to normal again until I got a call from Mr. Robert. One day, while I was sitting in the garden enjoying the cool, natural, fresh air, I got a call from Mr. Robert. He asked me to come to his office and see him. The call instantly changed my mood. I blocked his line immediately, and he used another number to call me. He told me I would regret everything if I didn't come to see him. I knew how heartless Mr. Robert could be, so immediately rushed to his office. I thought he had something important to tell me, but I was shocked when he wanted to have his way with me again. I refused and told him that wasn't our agreement. To my greatest surprise, he told me he had videos and pictures he took from our last encounter. He threatened to expose me if I didn't give in to his demands. I got scared. I couldn't believe I got played by Mr. Robert. I always knew him as a cunning man, but I didn't know he could stoop so low. At that point, I had two options. I either confess everything to Alex or sleep with Mr. Robert again. Unfortunately, I chose the latter. I decided to sleep with Mr. Robert again in order to save my marriage. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I felt that was the only way I could save my marriage. Mr. Robert kept blackmailing me and having his way with me every time he desired. I became a shadow of myself. I was losing weight every day. Alex kept asking me what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. He was worried because I was lost in thought. He knew I was hiding something from him, but he couldn't place it. He kept asking me if I was hiding anything from him, but I told him no. Every day he would wake me up from sleep before he goes to work and ask if there's anything I want to tell me. He told me I shouldn't hide anything from him, and that I should feel free and discuss whatsoever is bordering me with him. But I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. One day, Alex called me while at work that I shouldn't prepare any food that we would be having for dinner at our favorite restaurant. I was excited. This was the first time we would be having dinner after our wedding. I got dressed and rushed to the restaurant. I was already seated when Alex walked in. I fell in love all over again. This was the man I fell in love with. How did I ever bring myself to cheat on him? Why didn't I just tell him the truth from the beginning? Why did I even go and visit Mr. Robert alone on that fateful day? All these and more were the thoughts running through my head. I was so lost in thought that I didn't even when Alex sat down. He had to pat my shoulder to bring me to my senses. He told me he brought me out here because he noticed I have been stressed out lately, and he wanted to ask for my forgiveness for how he has acted all these while. He told me he acted out of character and that I should please forgive him. I asked him to stop apologizing and that I have already forgotten about everything. He gave me a rose banquet. He held my hands while looking straight into my eyes. He asked me if there's anything I have done and I'm not proud of. Guys, at that moment, I almost died. I thought that was the end for me. He told me to feel free and confide in him, and that I shouldn't keep anything away from him. He said he would try to understand and not judge me. That was my chance to confess everything to Alex, but instead, I got defensive. I pretended to be angry and asked him why he was trying to manipulate me. I wish I took the chance and confessed. Maybe he would have forgiven me. But I wasn't bold enough to do that. I was so scared, I cowardly turned everything against him. I asked him if there was something he had done that I should know, and he said no. I felt bad for Alex, but there was nothing I could do. Here I was accusing him for my own crimes. We ate our dinner in silence and went home. The silent treatment continued till the following day. Something told me Alex already knew the truth and that he was looking for the right opportunity to nab me. I continued seeing Mr. Robert secretly because I didn't want him exposing me to Alex and also leaking my nude. Everything was going smoothly until one day. Alex caught me, guys. Alex saw me coming out of Mr. Roberts' office. He asked me why I was coming from Mr. Roberts' office. At that moment, I wanted the ground to open so I could just disappear. I lied to him that I just went to check up on him. Guys, the lie didn't make sense. Why would I go check up on the man that has been embarrassing me and my husband? But at that moment, my brain was blank. I couldn't come up with any meaningful things to say. Alex gave me a disdainful look. He asked me how long I was willing to continue my lies. I pretended like I didn't what he was saying. He told me to stop the act that he knows everything. He told me he started suspecting something was wrong somewhere the moment he called my parents to thank them for clearing our loan, and they told him they didn't clear out any loan. He told me how he started snooping through my phone and found out I have been in contact with Mr. Robert. But he still didn't have any proof. He told how he finally found out the truth. It was Mr. Robert P.A. that called him and revealed everything to him. Apparently, she has a crush on Alex. That was why she decided to sell me out like. But truth be told, it is wrong of me to expect loyalty from a total stranger. What was I thinking? Alex was so furious with me. He was so mad I could see his veins while he was shouting. I tried to explain everything to him, but he refused to listen. Alex made a scene outside Mr. Robert's office. Mr. Robert locked his office and refused to come out. I was so ashamed of myself. I wanted to just disappear. Everything still feels surreal. Narrating everything is making me tear up all over again. How could Alex be so insensitive? Why would he embarrass me outside? I know what I did was wrong, but he didn't have the right to embarrass me that way. He is the reason I'm in this mess in the first place. I was just trying to save him from the everyday embarrassment. That was how I landed in this mess. I was angry at Alex. Why didn't he confront me after learning the truth? Why didn't he choose to keep silent, allowing me to make a fool of myself? I bet he enjoyed watching me make a fool of myself. Alex left me there and left. I decided to run after him, but my tiny, shaky legs couldn't meet up with him. I arrived home and was expecting to see Alex at home so I could apologize properly, but to my greatest surprise, Alex wasn't at home. I stayed up all night waiting for Alex, that I didn't even have time to think about everything that has happened. I was worried because Alex doesn't keep late nights and hasn't stayed out that late before. Worst of all, his phone was switched off. I was so caught up with everything that I didn't know when I dozed off. I was woken up by the doorbell at 4 a.m. I checked and saw Alex. I quickly opened the door. I was surprised to see him drunk. Alex doesn't drink. If for anything, he hates the smell of alcohol. He was furious to see me. He asked me what I was doing in his house. I told him it was my house too. He asked me to get out of his house. I thought he was just drunk and he would calm down later when he was more sober and we would be able to discuss everything. But I was wrong. He woke up around 12 p.m. and the first thing he did was throw my belongings out one after the other. I begged him to please listen to me, but he refused. All my pleas went on deaf ears. He told me he was done and that the marriage was over. He told me how I ruined his life by pushing him to go get a loan because I wanted a big wedding. He told me he regretted the day he got married to me, and even the day he set his eyes on me. He called me a lot of derogatory names. The more I begged him, the angrier he became. He asked me to leave and never step foot in his house again. I decided to leave when I saw how furious Alex was. I couldn't even believe the man standing before me was Alex. I was shocked at his behavior. I decided to go stay at my parents' house for some time so I could give some time to calm down. I left for my parents' place with few of my belongings. My parents were surprised to see they couldn't believe their eyes. I couldn't tell them everything that had happened, so I lied to them. Alex and I were just having a little misunderstanding and I needed a place to clear out my head. That was why I came back. While at my parents' place, I got the biggest shock of my life when I got divorce papers from Alex. My parents were shocked too. It was at that point I opened up to them. I told everything that had happened. They were very disappointed in me. They told me how shameless I was by stopping low to sleep a debt collector just to clear our loan. My parents took turns to call me names. They reminded me how they warned me not to get married to Alex in the first place, but I was blinded by love. My parents never liked Alex because they always believed he wasn't capable of taking care of me. They finally allowed me to marry him when they saw how much I love him and how happy he made me. The following day, my parents followed me to Alex's place so they could explain everything to him, but Alex paid deaf ears to them. He insulted them and chased us out of his house like common criminals. My parents were embarrassed. I was sad on their behalf. I never imagined in a million years that Alex would treat my parents that way. I became angry and started hating Alex. I know I made a mistake, but why is he not listening to me? He should at least listen to the reason why I did what I did in the first place. I did everything for him. I couldn't bear to see him getting embarrassed everywhere. That's why I let go of my honor and slept with Mr. Robert. Why is he not seeing the sacrifice I made for us to be free from debt? The more I try to hate him, the more I feel sad for him. He told me if I truly loved as I claimed, I would sign the divorce papers. Update. Hi guys, so I signed the divorce papers after I saw how adamant Alex was. I got tired of begging him, so I just did what he wanted. It wasn't easy for me because I couldn't imagine my life without him. I have known him for 5 solid years. He was my best friend and everything. We always moved together. Things only changed after our wedding. I couldn't forgive myself no matter how hard I tried. I knew I would never find any man as good and kind as Alex ever again. Alex made sure he was always there for me. Emotionally, he was my rock. Financially, he always provided. Even though he was just average, he made sure I never lacked anything. He could let go of his last dollar for me. After signing the divorce papers, soon our divorce proceedings started. It was hectic. It was emotionally draining for me. All efforts for reconciliation proved futile. Alex hated me, and I could see from the way he looked at me. Soon the divorce proceedings were over, and we finally got divorced. That was the saddest day of my life. I felt empty and lost. I became depressed. I always blamed myself for my failed marriage. I cried to bed every night. I kept wishing I never insisted on a big wedding in the first place. I was just naive. I wanted to prove to everyone that I was marrying a rich man. My selfish desire ruined my marriage before it began in the first place. I lost a good man, guys. My selfishness made me lose Alex. As for Mr. Robert, I later learned he never had any videos or pictures. He just used that to trap me into doing his biddings. I can't believe I even fell for such stupid trick in the first place. I don't know why I didn't even ask him to show me the video and pictures in the first place. I guess I was too scared to think straight. The cunning man took advantage of my naiveness. I don't even blame him. I blamed myself for going to his place in the first place and for allowing myself to be manipulated by him. It was my love for Alex that pushed me to accept Mr. Robert's ridiculous demands in the first place. If I could turn back the hands of time, I would have done things differently. But it's too late now. I take full accountability of everything that happened. I decided to stop wallowing in self-pity. I'm still trying to get used to the fact that Alex and I are no longer together again. Slowly, I'm beginning to smile again. I quit my job as a sales rep and joined my parents in our retail store. I'm picking up my life again. I wish Alex would one day forgive me for the pain I have caused him. I hope he genuinely finds happiness. I hope he one day understands why I did what I did. I wish him well. That's my story, guys. I hope everyone learns from my story. Cut your coat according to sizes and don't try to live above your means. Don't have a big wedding if you can't afford it. Don't have a big wedding because you want to prove a point to people, and most importantly, don't cheat on your spouse. Thanks and goodbye.